So now we're going into session 3, which is about the future of auditing. So this is going to be videoed in, I believe. Someone's working on the technology for that, hopefully? Yep. Okay, there we are. So this is going to be presented by Emma Walters. Welcome, Emma. I don't know whether you can see us or not, or you can hear us.
I can hear you, definitely, and I can see me on a big screen.
Okay. So Emma's Executive Officer for the Fresh Produce Safety Centre for Australia and New Zealand. Emma will be talking to us through the findings of some research around current auditing processes. Emma will be joined by Dr. Joe Rush, who will give us a brief account on some very recent research into rapid diagnostic methods for testing of foodborne pathogens. Joe is in Western Australia, so it is an early start for a 6:30 a.m., I believe. So welcome, Emma, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks very much. Great to be here virtually with you. I was hoping to be there in person with you, but you probably have read the papers and know why I can't be there. I'm in Sydney in full lockdown. As mentioned, I'm Emma Walters. I'm the Executive Officer of the Fresh Produce Safety Centre Australia and New Zealand. The FPSC was established in 2014 to enhance and promote fresh produce food safety throughout Australia and New Zealand. I'll start sharing my screen. Can't see it come up yet, but I'm sure there it is. So we're going to be talking to you about the FPSC 2025 Innovation Agenda, primarily the review of the audit process. Advance my slides. I just wanted to quickly mention that the work that we've done and we're presenting today is made possible because of our supporters, which are listed across there. We're supported by 24 businesses across the supply chain in both Australia and New Zealand. So the first project that we're going to talk about as part of the innovation agenda is the review of the audit process. And just to give you a tiny bit of background, in 2019, the FPSC decided to review its strategy, and in addition to the work that it does on outreach and education and research in fresh produce food safety, it decided to look annually at a project that would have the potential to have a step change or transformative impact in food safety, fresh produce. The first project that we looked at was the review of the audit process, and the second project that we looked at this year was the rapid diagnostics project, which Joe will speak about. But I'll talk first about the review of the audit process. So we set out to find out, what does fresh produce food safety compliance look like by 2025? We wanted to identify what was being done locally and globally to deliver a more robust, efficient, and cost-effective food safety compliance system. We gathered together an industry working group of volunteers, and I've got to thank those people. And we studied 13 food safety compliance schemes and some certification bodies to determine what innovations were being applied in our region and elsewhere. And this report was released in late 2020. So some of the challenges that we found in the audit process was the cost, frequency, and overlap of multiple audits. There was a challenge that we found around a 1 day per year mentality, not across the entire food safety, fresh produce spectrum, but in some areas there was a bit of a 1 day per year mentality. It was a pass-fail approach rather than a 365-day food safety culture approach. We found some challenges around the auditor workforce, an aging auditor workforce, particularly the distances travelled in Australia, a limited auditor pool, and so on. Also, there were challenges around the use of old technology. A lot of people still working on pen and paper and, one step more Excel. So there was a range of different challenges that we identified. The key areas that we found innovation on doing that review of 13 different schemes and CBs was around blended audits through the use of information communication technology. The idea of shifting from the 1 day per year mentality to improve food safety culture across the business 365 days a year. Some work being done on auditor professional development, training, incentive programs, scholarships and so forth, and attracting new auditors to the profession. There was some work being done on risk-based assessments to determine audit frequency. So this idea, which was being promoted by some, perhaps the Gap in Austria, was that there are more frequent audits for higher risk processes or products, or those with poor performance, and less frequent audits for lower risk products or processes, or those with years of good performance. Another area we found innovation was the use of unannounced audits and spot checks, which is particularly the case in the UK. It's become the norm there, and also in our region, but not so much in fresh produce. There's some in meat, for example, in Australia. And then a suite of new technologies, the sort of sexy stuff, including wearables and smart glasses, but we need to be aware of these new technologies and bear in mind the issue that I mentioned earlier about one of the challenges is that some people are still using a pen and paper to do their work on farm. So then after we released the report, we went out and asked industry, what did they think of their top priorities for innovation in the audit process? So we came up with this, which is the use of technology to offer either blended, so part on-site, part off-site, or fully remote audits, but we need to be aware with this issue, particularly around Wi-Fi and availability, but particularly for a fully remote audit, availability of Wi-Fi, but also that other issue I talked about, which is language issues and comfortability of working with technology. The use of technology to do other things other than offer blended or remote audits, for example, artificial intelligence, integrity algorithms, transparency of results, sharing of information. For example, the Irish board beer offers a smartphone application as part of their audit process, which allows people to close out their cars using their phone. Other priorities were alignment of auditor training, risk-based approaches, unannounced audits, though there were concerns expressed around that. A focus on a year-round approach, culture and constant monitoring. This is where there might be a bit of an intersection with our second project on rapid diagnostics. And capacity building for the new technologies. This comes back to this idea of people, auditees and auditors, and everyone involved in the audit process feeling comfortable with the use of new technology. One of the presenters, we had a workshop on this late last year, one of the presenters talked about the different sorts of technologies that are being used. This is live streaming for document review, so pre-audit document review and interviews around that. Then use of mobile technology, such as tablets for virtual site tours, and then live streaming using smart glass technology, where you put the glasses on and people see what you see, with a live feedback to the auditor platform. And then use of technology for things like aerial analytics, looking at the whole site, drone and satellite and so forth. So the workshop then identified key priority actions. So this is around two distinct areas, technology and risk and culture. So for technology, the workshop that we held following the release of the report identified that we need to be looking at a roadmap for the end-to-end process of digitisation of audits in fresh produce, and a roadmap of actually how to get there. And then combined with that, this is this issue that I've mentioned it a couple of times. This is the people skills required to reach a required level of tech comfortability, tech comfort for key stakeholders. And then the other, and we've started work on this, just starting with Fresh Care. And then the other work on this is risk and culture. So this is the making sure that culture, food safety culture, is a 365-day a year approach, and that audits aren't seen as just this 1 day a year process. So the priority there was to enhance the education, language, and perception of food safety audits. And we're actually about the FPSC is about to release in the next week a fact sheet on food safety culture, which is aiming to help boost the food safety culture approach across the year. And the second item was promote audit training and development, which is for audit consistency, professional development, and improved career pathways. This isn't really something for the FPSC to do, but GFSI is doing work on this through its race to the top. It's got had some consultation around harmonisation and benchmarking of audited training, and there should be a report out for consultation later this year. So I'd just like to thank the industry working group and contributors there for their work. So this is the audit process. I'm now going to hand over to Dr. Joe Rush, who's in Perth, who's going to talk about very briefly about the rapid diagnostics, the second project that we did under the innovation agenda, and then we'll come back together and talk about how the two mesh together. So over to you, Joe.
Thanks very much, Emma, and kia ora, everybody. So a key issue facing the fresh produce industry is the time, expertise required and the cost of testing for pathogenic microorganisms to ensure food is safe for our consumers. The Fresh Produce Safety Centre identified that this was an area ripe for innovation, and we set out to review the area of rapid diagnostics in order to ascertain how these technologies could be developed and used effectively by the fresh produce industry. This was done by reviewing the current scientific literature in the field, as well as interviewing a number of experts. We determined that conventional methods of pathogen detection can be slow, laborious, and expensive, leading to interest in new technologies that are rapid, sensitive, and inexpensive. Although there are numerous types of rapid diagnostic methods being developed, the specific challenges of testing fresh produce mean that many are unsuitable for the industry. Effective detection of pathogens in fresh produce is dependent on a number of variables, including the type and structure of the produce, how the produce is grown, processed, handled, and used by consumers, and if there is any potential for internalization of pathogens, as opposed to pathogens just on the surface. Internal pathogens require internal sampling, which usually requires maceration of the produce and introduces a number of other complications from the sample matrix itself. There are 4 types of rapid diagnostic methods. Firstly, nucleic acid-based methods like PCR, NASBA, and LAMP. Then we have immunologically based methods like ELISA, lateral flow immunoassay, and immunogenic separation assays. Biosensor-based methods, including nanobiosensors. And finally, LOC and POC devices, which incorporate some or all of these other methods into small devices, which may incorporate all of the steps from sampling preparation to detection into one device. Analysing the literature and the interview responses, we concluded that there is no one-size-fits-all solution likely for the fresh produce industry. Due to differences between produce, there may be a need to develop a specific RDM for each product. Risk factors are also different for each type of produce, and using RDMs effectively will mean risk assessment on a case-by-case basis. The best method to apply, the frequency of the testing, at what point in the process and supply chain it's used, and the stringency of the testing necessary will all vary. The physical structure of the produce, for example, if the skin is rough and has crevices where pathogens may be difficult to remove, versus a hard, smooth, easily washed skin, and the potential for internalization of pathogens are also important variables. Given these challenges, microfluidic lab-on-chip devices and paper-based devices like lateral flow test strips appear to be the most promising in the real-world scenarios of the fresh produce industry. These devices are generally based on different types of biosensors, sometimes with a pre-sensing step such as IMS or LAMP also incorporated. They have the advantage of being quick, affordable, sensitive, specific, and easy to use. These types of devices can also provide an easily modified platform for a range of different tests. And ideally, they will enable testing to be performed on-site by staff with minimal training. We suggest some next steps in developing RDMs for the fresh produce industry. Firstly, investigating, developing, and validating a selection of promising methods. A number of industry experts suggested that looking at already commercially available methods that may be suitable for modification for fresh produce may be a good path to pursue. Selecting 2 or 3 high priority produce sectors which have the greatest need for rapid diagnostic techniques to initially concentrate on. For example, fresh berries. Concentrating on external over internal pathogens to greatly simplify the processing requirements and remove the confounding factor of the food matrix itself. Engaging with several industry big players to aid in the initial development and testing of promising RDMs, moving on to an industry-wide development path later on. We also think that it is absolutely vital to survey the industry to well understand their requirements and desires with regards to rapid testing. Industry engagement at every step will ensure that rapid technologies are able to be a valuable, eagerly awaited tool in the real world.
Thanks for that, Jo. That's the quickest summary of the very detailed report that I think we've had. So thank you for that. So what, if any, is the connection between the 2 FPSC Innovation Agenda projects, which is the review of the audit process and rapid diagnostic methods? I had to think about this, and I mean, I think that the issue really, there is a connection there in that auditors typically rely on past data, particularly for testing. And so RDMs will allow auditors to potentially verify that data by doing a test on site on the day, if they get to that point of being fast, inexpensive and accurate. They might also be useful in that shift if it occurs to unannounced audits for the same reasons. I think that the development of RDMs, though, is quite a way off, particularly for the fresh produce industry, and so we wouldn't want to be suggesting that, you know, this is something that is about to occur around the corner. Though I think that within the next 3 to 5 years, it would be a realistic time frame potentially for RDMs to be available and used. I mean, I think about things like the LGMA, the California Leafy Greens Marketing Association, have just announced that they require when a product is grown in a field with elevated risk, so for example, proximity to animals, that there must be tests undertaken 4 to 7 days before harvest, and rapid diagnostics can really fit in with that process. The Americans, particularly the LGMA, are much more focused on testing and audits, and have 5 audits a year. We don't say that you can test your way to food safety, but tests are obviously a helpful adjunct to allow growers and suppliers and buyers to have confidence in the safety of the fresh produce. If you want to read either of these reports, we've got summaries so that you don't have to spend hours doing it. So it's a 4-page summaries for both reports. and also the full reports, which are quite detailed and in-depth. They're available on our FPSC website, which is listed there, fpsc-anz.com. And if you click, I've tried to highlight it down the bottom, if you click on the FPSC Innovation Agenda menu item, you'll come up with those reports and the workshop report from the audit workshop. I just wanted to give you a very quick plug for our Fresh Produce Safety Conference, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. It's entirely online. It was due to be held in Sydney, but for the reasons that I'm not with you today, it's being held online. So if you're interested in finding more about what the FPSC is doing and also what is happening in Australia and New Zealand, we've got your very own Damien Farrelly speaking. So very pleased to have him coming, and it's a one-day event that runs from around 9 till 3, which is 11 till 5 for New Zealand, and then it's followed by 4 one-hour workshops once a week. So the conference happens for 6 hours on the 18th of August, and then the 25th of August through to the 15th of September on a Wednesday for 1 hour a week from 1 till 2, which is from 3 to 4 for you. We're having 4 one-hour workshops on different topics, such as preparing for a crisis in food safety, rapid diagnostic methods, an update on harps, and a day in the life of a grower, which will be very interesting. That one's run by Fresh Care. So I hope you can join us for that. And I think we're out of time, so I'll hand back to the chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Emma and Joe. And I guess we can thank COVID for the fact that we can use this technology now and we're all a bit more familiar with it. And it's really good to be able to get experts from another country and coming into our conference. And I really appreciate your contribution here. Thank you. We've maybe got time for 1 or 2 questions, if there's any questions from the floor. I think I can't see any hands raised, but I really appreciate the presentation you gave, and I think we shouldn't lose sight of what we're all here for. We're here for ultimately we're here for the trust of the consumers, and if we don't do a really good job and through our auditing process and having very good systems in place, then we won't maintain that trust of our consumers. And I think we don't need to lose sight of what the overall objective is here. So I think it's a really important the subject that you talked about, and really thank you for your presentations.
Thanks
there's any other questions?
very much. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice to see you all.
Very good. So we're going to clap. So I don't know whether you can hear it or not.
Oh yes.